زور سپاسی همو برستان دکم بو آماده بون تانو بو دعوت کردنم بو هم کوبونویا سپاسی برزشتان دکم بو رخصاندنی هم در فتح.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your attendance and for inviting me, and I would like to thank Kolak and the Washington Institute for inviting me and giving me this opportunity.
عوتنی من بو واشنطن لسر دعوتی حکومت امریکا بو وی باسی وضع استای عراق و ناوچکه و پیوندی حریم و بغداد بندور و درجی بکن.
So my visit to Washington came at the invitation of the U.S. Government in order to talk about the situation in Iraq, in the wider region, and also the relationship between Kurdistan region and Iraq in detail.
و دوینه لکوبونو کم لگل جناب سروک و جناب جگیری سروک و مسئولین تری حکومت امریکا با دور و درجی باسی همو او خانانه من کرد.
Yesterday, during our meetings with the President, the Vice President, and other officials of the U.S. administration, we have talked about all these issues in detail.
بگمان زور لبرستان آگادارن که ایم وکو خلق کردستان خوین مانده و قربانی کی زور مانده با عراق کی دموکراتی فدرالی فرلان بتکایو.
I'm sure many of you know that the people of Kurdistan have sacrificed a great deal and have shed a lot of blood for the sake of building a federal, democratic, and pluralistic Iraq.
الان حقیقتا میشه لبرچامانه اگر یارمتی امریکا نبود تصحیحاتی ایوه نبویا کرکچانی ایوه به تنها به ایمه او هدف تحقیق ندکر و او رجیمه به ایمه به تنها ندارو.
But we always are mindful of the fact that had it not been for the U.S. Support and assistance, without the sacrifices of men and women in uniform, and the sacrifices that have been made, this objective would not have been achieved and the regime would not have been toppled.
طبعا در فتره کی زور زیارین بو خلکی عراق خاطب کایا و بو اوی عراق کی دموکراتی فدرالی فرالان داب مزرینن و عراق کی تازه بنیاد بنین.
So we got a golden opportunity in order to build a new Iraq, an Iraq that's federal, democratic, pluralistic, an Iraq that's new and better.
وابي معلوم بيتن كعراق چون بيكاتو وعراق لسه مكوني سركي بيكاتو ككردا شيعية سنية.
And also to be clear that what's the composition of this Iraq? It's three main pillars that constitute Iraq. It's the Kurds, Shias, and the Sunnis.
وأنا تويتريش هن لقال رئيس احترام بويان وأبي مافيان فارزاوي وكو تركمان وكلدان وآشوري وسريان وحتى كمينة كي أرمنيش مانها.
Having said that, we have to be mindful of the fact that we have other national minorities living with us, that they have to be respected, they have to be equally treated. We have got the Turkmen, the Chaldean, Assyrian, and Syriac, and also an Armenian minority.
الله ما بيبزانين أساسي عراق لدو نتوي سركي بيجده أجر وكو نتوى عايش عرب وكرد.
But we also have to realize that in terms of nationalities, Iraq is made of two main nationalities, Arabs and Kurds.
إما توانين بلين لكردستان أزموني إما تحدي كي باش سركوتني بدرسي نوع من ناتوانم بلين نمونية بكمو كوريا بلام لروي أمن واسايشة لروي آبوريا لروي كمالاتيا و بيشكوتن وسركوتني كي زوري بخويا بينيو.
I can say that in Kurdistan, we have an experience that to a great extent it has been a successful one. I cannot claim that this is an ideal experience without any flaws or shortcomings, but I can say for sure that the security and stability situation is very good. Economic and commercial activities are good. Socially, we have made a lot of progress.
اما بدوای طول سنه و نچونی ملا پراکی تازه من کرده و لگل همو کسی بویا امن و آسایش کردستان توانیمان بی پارێزین و بەهاوکاری جەماوەری خۆمان و دام و دەستگاکانی خۆشمان.
In fact, we in the region have adopted a tolerant policy. We have not resorted to revenge and retaliation. We have opened a new page, and therefore we have been able to provide a safe and secure environment and to protect our people. And for that, we are grateful to the support and assistance that we have got from our own people, but also thanks to the dedication of the security and law enforcement authorities.
و اما وای کرد که زور ل کمپانیانی در اول استا هی امریکیش دستیان پیکردوه که رول علیمی کردستان کنو لوی استثمار کن.
And that has, the safe and secure environment has been the reason by inviting and attracting foreign companies, and lately American companies also started to come towards the region and start their investment and other activities.
من چند نمونه اکتان و کرتی و خمه برچاوتان لدوی کاتی 2003 که رژیمی کونی عراق روخا درآمدی نفر لکردستان $275 بود. استا $5,000 و تپریوش.
I will give you some brief examples to show you the difference that we have made and the progress that we have made. After the fall of the regime in 2003, the GDP per capita income for individual in Kurdistan region was $275 per annum, and now it exceeded $5,000.
نسبتی هی امیه 156 بو استدا بزیوه بو 116.
And also the illiteracy rate, it was 56%, it has reduced or dropped to 16%.
خدمات که سروی همویان کهربا تقریبا استا با تواوتی کهربا گشتو تا همو شاروچکه و دهاتو و لزور شوینیش 24 ساعتیه.
Regarding other services, and namely electricity, we have been able to improve that sector. I can say that almost we have been able to provide electricity to all the cities and townships and the rural areas. In certain areas, we have got 24-hour electricity.
اوی که هاتو میزانی عراق ل 2003 و تا استا ل $9 تریلیون تپریوه.
What has come to the Iraqi treasury from 2003 until now, it has exceeded half of a trillion.
بلام واتوانن بپرسن لشوینکانی تری عراق کهربا اگر هج بی ل 3 تا 4 ساعت زیادتر نیه.
You can check that information to see what kind of electricity has been provided in other parts of Iraq, which does not exceed 3 to 4 hours.
1 میلیون کس کوهزی چکدار هیا بلام تروریش بردوامه.
There are 1 million people under arms, but still terrorism and the threat of terrorism continues.
استا عراق ل قیرانه کی جدید هیا.
Iraq is facing a serious crisis
و
today.
اما دوی نزور براشکاوی لگل سروک و جگیره که باسمان کردوه.
Yesterday we have discussed that very frankly with the president and the vice president,
برای تکراوی دروات
and it's going towards one-man rule.
دست گرتن بسر همو دام و دزگاکانی دولت.
And it's going towards control over all the establishments of the state.
بونمونه مثلا یک نفر رئیس وزراء قائد عام قوات مسلحه وزیر دفاع وزیر داخلیه رئیس مخابرات آخر شد دوای رئیس بانک مرکزی کردوه که بانک مرکزیش عاید بخوی بید اما لکوی دنیا نمونه وهایه.
So we have got a situation, or we ended up having a situation in Baghdad when one individual is the prime minister, and at the same time he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, he is the minister of defense, he is the minister of interior, and the chief of the intelligence. And lately he has sent a correspondence to the president of the central bank of Iraq that that establishment would also come under the prime minister. Where in the world you would find such an example?
اما و خلق کردستان ام حکومته با خوینو لسر شانی اما دروز بوا بویا اما پروش وانه و اما بغداد بو خلقی تر بو کسی تر با جنو هلی.
We as the people of Kurdistan, we believe that this government has come to being as a result of the blood that we have shed and as a result of the sacrifices we have contributed. We are eager to see the situation reformed, therefore we will not leave Baghdad for others.
و اصل دا ابي وضع عراق واخازي كعراق ابي بيك حكم بكري لان كرد وعرب يعني عربي الشيعة وعربي السنة لقال رزقرتن وبجداري كردني نتوكاني تر.
So therefore we see the situation in Iraq that it requires to be ruled in partnership. For that, the power sharing and partnership to consist of the Kurds and the Arabs, both the Shia Arabs, Sunni Arabs, and also with the respect and participation of the Turkmen and other minorities as well.
دستوری عراقی زور واضحه، دستوری که زور باشه، اما رازین چون که دنگمان بوی داوا و ایشمان بوی کردوه، بلام التزامی پینا کری و او دستور علی مرج بومانوی عراق به یک پارچه‌ای التزام کردنه به هم دستوره که است روزانه خرق نکری.
And the constitution of Iraq is very clear and obvious. It's a good constitution. We approve and are committed to this constitution because we voted for that and we worked for it. And it states very clearly that commitment to this constitution is a condition for Iraq to remain united. But the problem is that this constitution is not being adhered to today. So on a daily basis, we see that there is breach and violation to the constitutional articles.
واستا وكوكوتم عراق لقيرانك دايا ومن دوام كردوها كعمو هذا السياسي كان عراقي كوب بنوع علاجك لم وضعب كان نهلنو رجب بجرن لوي دكتاتورية جاري كتر بيتا وعراق.
As a result of the situation that we have, and as a result of the crisis that we face, I have called upon all the Iraqi political parties and groups to get together and find a solution for this situation so that we all work together not to allow and also to prevent dictatorship to re-emerge in the country.
واتفاقية هولير بتواتي جيبة كريكا لنوفمبر سال 2010 لسوا أساس حكومة بيكر.
And also to make sure that the Erbil agreements that we were able to reach in November 2010, on the basis of which the government was formed, to be implemented on the ground.
اگر ام وضعه به هاوکاری همولک علاج کرا اما خیاری مفضلی ایمه اگینا ام وضعی قائم است لبغداد به هیچ شیوه خیاری قابل قبول نیه به نسبتی ایمه.
So if we were able to address the problems and solve them, that's the most preferred option. Otherwise, the current status quo in Baghdad is in no way our option, and we will not accept that as an option. Thank you.
لبروا او وقتی من آچارین بگرین و بو ملتی خومانو و بریار لچارانوسی خوی بداد.
Otherwise, we would be obliged to go back to the people for the people to make their decision.
و من دوای گرانوام لواشنطن با جدی هولادین که نهز عراقی کان کون کارو و هولدن او مشکلی پیک و چاره صرف کین.
Therefore, after my return from Washington, we will start seriously working with the other Iraqi groups in order to do our best to try solve this problem.
زور سپاس.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that very strong statement about Iraq. I am going to take the prerogative of the chair for once and ask the first question and then turn to you, the audience. And I understand that you are prepared to talk about foreign policy issues as well as internal Iraqi issues. But let me start with the subject that you broached, the situation in Iraq. I was going to ask you about U.S.-Kurdish cooperation in toppling another dictator in Damascus, but it sounded to me from your remarks that you were looking for U.S. help in dealing with Iraq's own internal movement, as you see it, in the direction of autocracy rather than democracy. Can you tell us something about what specifically you would like the United States to do, if anything, about Iraq's internal political crisis, and what your meetings here in Washington in the last 2 days provided in that respect? Thank you.
بگمان من آمادم اگر بزانم ولامی هر پرسیاری کل سهر بابتک.
As far as questions are concerned, I would like to assure you that if I know the answers, I will be at your disposal to, you can make any question on any subject.
بالنسبة إما وملتي إما زور گرینگ ببزانین آیا امریکا است چون تماشای وضع عراق دکات لگل وضع حریم کردستان دکات و چون وضع کده بینی دوینی اوی من گویم لی بولا سروک اوباما ولا جیگیرکی بایدن تأکید یان کرده و که اوان پابندن به عراق که دموکراتی فدرالی فرلایانی و پابندن به حریم کردستان و خلق کردستان و دستکوتکانی کردستان که اما بو اما طبعا زور هلوسته که دلخوش کرد اوان لگل اوان که وضعکه چهار سر بکری با پی دستور و امش لگل اوان که با پی دستور وضع عراق چهار سر کن و حولی شدین با پی دستور وضع عراق چهار سر کن بلام اگر چهار سر نکرا ام وضع استا و کبوتم ام خیاری ایمنیه و قبول نیه.
As far as we are concerned, our people are concerned, we wanted very much to know how does the United States look at Iraq and Kurdistan region, and how does the United States see the situation in Iraq today. Yesterday in my meetings with President Obama, Vice President Biden, it was reassuring to hear their commitment to a federal, democratic, pluralistic Iraq, and also their commitment to Kurdistan region, to the people of Kurdistan, and also to the achievements that have been made in Kurdistan. This was a very encouraging position for us to hear and for the commitment to be reiterated. And also they have shown their commitment to solve the problems in Iraq in accordance with the constitution. This is of course something that we also want to solve the problems in Iraq within the framework of the constitution. If we were able to solve them in accordance with the constitution, as I said earlier, this is our most preferred option. If not, the current situation and the status quo is not an option for us.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn the floor over to you for your questions, and let me start with Nazar Janabi over here. Thank you. Please use the microphone if you've got one.
Mr. President, thank you so much for coming. And my question is that we are noticing these days a movement by multiple parties and who are trying to, it seems like a coordinated effort. Yourself are in DC, Mr. Serok Barzani is visiting Iran, Dr. Yadalawi is visiting Turkey, Mr. Tariq Hashemi is visiting Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Since you mentioned that it's, is it going to be like a coordinated effort between parties that want to maintain Iraq's democracy? And how far are you willing to take that effort in not keeping the current status quo? Thank you so much, sir.
پرسیارێک لە نزار جەنابی دڵە زۆر سپاسی جەنابتان دەکەین بۆ هاتن پرسیارەکەی ماوەیەکەی مام لە حەسە دەکەین لەو ماوەی دوایی جوڵێکی زۆر هەیە کە چەند لایەنەیە ئەوە بەڕێستان دەبینی کە هاتوونەتە ئێرە لە ئەمریکانە وەکەوەکەوا جوودێکی منەسەقە خۆتان لە واشنگتن دی سی نێتێبان بازانێت چوو بۆ ئێران هەلاوی چوو بۆ تورکیا و هاشمیش لە قەتەر و سعودیا وەکو باستان کردکەوە دەگەڕێنەوە دەست بە جوود دەکەن ئایا دەکرێت ئێمە ئەوە ببین وەکو بەشێک لەو جوودەکەیەوە تەنسیقی لەسەر دەکەن هەموو لایەنەکان بۆ پاراستنی دیموکراتیەتی عێراقی و ئێوەش خۆتان چەند حازرن بۆ ئەوەی ئەو جوودانە زیاتر بچێت پێش بۆ ئەو مەبەستە.
بالتأكيد خوي أبي عراقي كان خوان گرفتکانی خوان چاره سر کن او وقت دوستکانی اتوانن یارمتیان بدن بلام اگر بگرین به دوی ودا لدره و چاره سر بو کشه خوان دوزنه و تمام چاره سری کشکانی ناکن.
Of course, we have to be mindful of the fact that the Iraqis themselves have to find solution for the problems. When they try to find solutions for themselves, then their friends in the international community can help. But if they wait for others, for the outsiders to help solve their problems, they will wait forever and they will not see solutions. They have to do it themselves.
والله مشتكي طبيعية لقال جيرانكان بدرجة أساسية بيروراد وقول بكريتن بلام نقبة ونيتك اوان بين دست خنن و مسائل اوان بين لجوتی عراقی کان مشکل کان چاره سر کن ام سردانانه طبیعیه بنا حقیقت سردانی من هیچ رابطه کی باوشتانی تروانیه با سردانانه
It's very natural to have relations with the neighboring countries and also with the international community, but also specifically with the neighboring countries in order to exchange views and also to exchange ideas about this, but not to give them an opportunity to interfere in the internal affairs of Iraq, or for them to come to solve the problems, or for them to act on behalf of the Iraqi people. The Iraqis have to do it themselves, but my visit has nothing to do with the other visit. It was separate.
Thank you. I'm going to take questions in the order in which I see them. So let me go to Barbara Slavin over here. Thank you.
Barbara Slavin from almonitor.com and from the Atlantic Council. Mr. President, very nice to see you in Washington again. I want to clarify what you said earlier. Are you saying that you will go to the Kurdish people and have them vote on separating from Iraq if this situation cannot be resolved? And is there some timeline on this? Also the question of oil. Are you not going to be providing oil revenues and exporting oil as long as this stalemate continues? Thank you.
اما 6 ساله هر چوروانی وعودی هر جارش به بهانه های انتخابات لبغداد، انتخابات لهرم، های انتخابات لامریکا، های کنگره سران عربه که تماشا من کرد 6 سال من بری به وعودی به انجام لبروا براستی اما کراوانی وقت ابي سقفك زماني محددي بودا بنره و ابي جيب بكري اما ماندي بوين لوعود ولقصه كردن اما حقائق که خینا بردمی ملتی کرد ایتر خوی بریال بداد اما یک دو هم بالنسبه نوت لسال 2007 اما اتفاق من کرد لسر پروژه قانونی نوت و غاز که بچی بو پارلمان اگر تا مانگی 5 او قانون در باز نبو لپارلمان هر دولا یعنی اما وکو هرمی کردستان و حکومتی بدا آزادن لا امضا کردنی گریبست لگل کمپانیکانی تر اما یک شتیش ما نکرد و خلافی دستور هرچی عقودی امضا من کرد و گریبستکان هموی به پی او اتفاقا و به پی دستور بود که دستور او حقی به امدا اما ایتر پیشی تقریبا 4 مانگ 5 مانگ وفدی کی اما چون بو بغداد لگل وزیری نوت ریکوتن که پاره او شریکانه بدن تا است پاره او کمپانیانه نداوه بوی او نفت را گیره و نکل بر هیچ خلاف سیاسی هایش مبستگی تر هر وقتی پاره او کمپانیانه بده نفت که در وقت
We have been waiting for the last 6 years for promises that were not delivered, for agreements that were not honored. We have waited, and every time they give us an excuse. Once they say there are elections in Baghdad, another time elections in the region. Once there is the election in the United States, then there is the Arab Summit, etc., etc. We have found out that we have passed 6 years waiting for these promises to be delivered. We cannot anymore wait for unfulfilled promises and undelivered promises. There has to be a specific and a certain timeline for this to be delivered. We got tired of this, and we are fed up with that. Therefore, what we will do is that we will work on the preferred option to work with the other Iraqi groups to find a solution. If not, then we go back to our people and to put all these realities in front of the people for the people to be free to make their own decision. As far as the issue of the oil is concerned, in 2007, when we were working and we reached an agreement on a draft oil or hydrocarbons law, we both agreed that if that law did not pass in the parliament until May that same year, that both sides, the KRG and the federal government, are free to continue signing contracts with international oil companies. Therefore, whatever we have done in the region, we have not violated the constitution. We have acted constitutionally and legally within the framework of the constitution. Adding to that, 4 months ago, a number of delegations went from the region to Baghdad, and when the delegation from the region went, they have had meetings with the government officials, and specifically when they agreed with the Minister of Oil and the Minister of Finance for the expenses of the foreign oil companies to be given. So we have been waiting for that. That has not been coming through. Therefore, the oil has been halted or stopped because of that and for no other political reasons. The moment they pay the expenses for the companies, the oil will resume.
Thank you. Next on my list, by coincidence, was Jim Plack. I think you may have an oil question, but maybe that was answered. Okay. The next person over there. Yes, thank you, sir.
بخيراتي سروك از جهاد صالح كردستان سوريا برسا مشتا امزان كردستان سوريا ملتي كردستان هيفيدارن لو حكومتها كردستاني اريكاريه بواره بكي وبشكل خاص المجلس الوطني الكردي تشناريناتا جبو مستقبل كردا بشتي جو بشار اسد بخوار وجبو هر كسي نعرب وقف الله وق درزيه وق علويه ام هيفيدارن انه اريكاري هبه وتشناريناتا سيرفيتشتي سباس.
The question from Mr. Jihad from Syria, that was regarding the situation in Syria and Kurdistan of Syria, and what kind of assistance the Kurdistan Regional Government would be providing to the Syrian Kurdish National Council in Syria, and also how do you see the future of Syria and the Kurds in Syria after the fall of the Assad regime, and also the future for the Muslims, the Christians, the Druze, and all the other components of that. They wanted to know President Barzani's views regarding this issue, as far as I got the questions.
تو زانی بری دو سه ماه ما کنگره یک ترتیب دان لبلیری بو برایت ما کردت روشاوا و یک قیاده هبی و یک خطاب هبی تمام ویدا باش بو کنگره تا گردان و قیاده خو حل بجارتن و بونا خوی یک خطاب سوت ما زور گرنگه بو آینده کاده مافی براین مال کردستان و سوریه به جواب دست بین طبعا حتى نه حکومتانها نه معارضه تشتكي كونكريت فينيا بو كردا او دي بوات بترك بيز شو مفاوضات كان جانا چه حلول او جانا چه حل كي ام پشتیبانی وان بكين بس بگمان نسبت ما مهمه ام حاضرين بو پشتیبانی وان بس طبيعي پشتیبانی نه معنا و عسكري يعني سلاح وتشتيوانا بس پشتیبانی معنوي سياسي مادي هم دي بوكين ونفوذ خوش دي بكارينين بون دي بجانا حلك واتفاقك جا معارضه بو مستقبل كرداي مضمون بي والنسبة ما زور مهمة حكومة دهاتي سوريا حكومة كائتلافي ديمقراطي بي وما في كردا وهما افنديجي تأمين كان.
So, a couple of months ago in Erbil, we hold a conference for our brothers in the Syrian and the Western Kurdistan. Our aim was in order to have all the Syrian Kurds elect a leadership and also come up with a united a unified statement. So it was good. As a result of the conference, they were able to elect a leadership and come up with a clear vision and statement for their future. Of course, it's very important for us that there would be a clear future for them. But what we see right now, neither the current government nor the opposition have anything concrete to provide for the Kurdish people. So, but that issue is left to them. So whichever way they would conduct their negotiations, we will support the result or the outcome of their negotiations. Of course, it's important to highlight that we are ready to support them, but not military support or providing ammunition. It would be a moral support, political support, financial support, and we will use our influence in order to help solve their problems. But of course, it would be good for them to be involved in talks and negotiations so that they can reach an agreement with the other groups of the opposition. But with that, the future of the Kurds in Syria is very important for us and for their future to be secured. And it's important to make sure that this future government in Syria would be a democratic coalition government that respects the rights of the Kurds and all the other citizens of Syria.
Thank you. I might mention that if you'll permit me, that Mr. Jihad Saleh is one of the contributors to Fikra Forum, our blog on this issue, and I encourage you to follow this discussion further on this blog that you can find on the Washington Institute's website. Yes, over there in the back, and then I'll get to you, Carol. Yeah. Saeed, yeah.
Thank you, David. Welcome, Your Excellency, Mr. President.
Turn on the mic, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Welcome, Mr. President. سؤالي لسيادتك يخص المادة 140. ما رأيك وضع المادة 140 وما هو مستقبلها وكذلك بالنسبة لاتفاق البيل. My question is about Article 140 and the future of their Beale agreement. Thank you.
المادة 140 هي مادة دستورية ونتيجة مناقشات ومباحثات طويلة إلى أن توصلنا إلى هذه المادة، وهي الطريق الصحيح لحل مشكلة الأراضي المستقطعة من كردستان. الحقيقة أنا لا أقول المتنازع عليها، لأنه بالنسبة لنا لا نزاع عليها ولا شائبة في أنها تعود إلى كردستان، لكننا أبدينا أقصى درجات المرونة لكي تعود هذه المناطق إلى كردستان بحسب مادة دستورية وبطريقة قانونية. لكن هناك تهرب كما قلت من 6 سنوات، التهرب من تنفيذ هذه المادة، وحل أو تنفيذ هذه المادة هو من مصلحة العراق وتخدم مستقبل العراق. الزمن لا يمكن أن ينسينا هذه المادة، هذه يجب أن تطبق، وهذه أراضي كردية كردستانية مستقطعة يجب أن تعود إلى أراضي كردستان. والنتيجة نعود إلى استفتاء المواطنين في هذه المناطق. إذا المواطنين قرروا أن لا يعودوا إلى إقليم كردستان فهذه عندئذ سنتخلص من المسؤولية التاريخية، لكن القرار هو بيد أبناء المنطقة. فليجري الاستفتاء وعندئذ يكون واضح من يريد أن يعود ومن لا يريد.
اتفاق اربيل اتفاق اربيل حولير بعدين الشق الدول.
ممكن السؤال الشق الثاني السؤال ما افتهمت أنا. اتفاق أربيل مو فقط تشكيل الحكومة والبرلمان والرئاسة. اتفاق أربيل هي مجموعة اتفاقات، منها تثبيت الشراكة الحقيقية، الالتزام بالدستور والفيدرالية، إعادة التوازن إلى مؤسسات الدولة وخاصة القوات المسلحة وقوى الأمن الداخلي، قانون النفط والغاز، المادة 140، موضوع البيشمركة. كل هذه المسائل هي ضمن اتفاق أربيل، ولو طبقت لما كان العراق الآن في الوضع اللي هو الآن فيه. وإذا لم تطبق اتفاقية أربيل أعتقد المشاكل واضحة، العراق سيواجه مشاكل حقيقية.
Article 140 is a constitutional article. It needed a lot of discussions and talks until we have reached this. This is the best way to solve this problem. It's regarding solving the problems of the territories that have been detached from Kurdistan region. In fact, I do not want to call it disputed areas because we do not have any dispute on that. For us, it's very clear there is any flow for that. But we have shown utmost flexibility in order to find a legal and a constitutional solution for this problem. And in order to pave the way for the return of these areas, according to the constitution and on the basis of law and legally to the Kurdistan region. But we have found out that there is an effort to evade and run away from responsibility for the last 6 years in implementing this constitutional article. And I want to assure you that implementing this constitutional article is in the interest of Iraq and in the interest of stability. If there are people who think that time would make us forget about this, they're wrong. Time would not help forget or solve the problem. These are Kurdish territories, part of Kurdistan region, and it has to return to Kurdistan based on the mechanism that has been stipulated in the constitution. And at the end of the day, as the constitution stipulates, it's going back to what the people want to determine. So it's the referendum for the people of these areas, and they will decide. When the people, if the people decide to join Kurdistan region, they are welcome. And if the people decide not to, at that time we will not have any responsibility on our shoulders. So people would be held responsible for their own decision. As far as the second section of your question, the Erbil agreement, in fact, the agreement was not only for the sake of forming the government and forming the three presidencies, the presidency, the speakership of the parliament, and premiership. In fact, it was a package that included a number of essential items. First, to put in place a genuine partnership in the country. Second, commitment to the constitution and its implementation. The issue of federalism. The return of balance of power and special in all the state institutions and establishment, and namely in the armed forces and in the security forces, the issue of the hydrocarbons law, the Article 140 of the Constitution, the status of the Peshmerga. These were all part of the package that have been there. Had this Erbil agreement been implemented, we would not have faced the situation that we are in today. Therefore, if we do not implement the Erbil agreement, then there would be certainly problems in Iraq.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Josh Rogan, Foreign Policy Magazine. Mr. President, last month, President Obama nominated Brett McGurk to be the next U.S. ambassador to Iraq. 1 day later, former President Alawi stated that he would not work with Ambassador McGurk. He stated several concerns about Brett McGurk's perceived closeness to Prime Minister Maliki. I'm wondering, do you share those concerns? Thank you.
اگر علاوی پرسی منی کلبا پیم اگو او تصحیح مده حقیقت اما سفیر امریکایی و سیاست امریکا بجید بگینی.
Had Alawi consulted with me, I would have told him not to give such a statement or issue such a statement, because he has been nominated as the ambassador of the United States to Iraq, and he would implement the U.S. policy in Iraq.
Thank you. I had Carol Migdalovitz on the list. Please, Carol, over there. Can we get a microphone? Right there.
Thank you. Mr. President, it's been reported that the Turkish government has a new strategy to deal with its Kurdish problem, and that part of that strategy may be to have you play a more prominent role in solving its Kurdish problem. Could you tell us something about your relationships with the PKK and what role you're prepared to play in helping Turkey resolve its Kurdish situation? Thank you.
پیش سالک برای اردوگان هاتا هولیر و خطابه کی علنی دا تیاو روزه که این کاری هبونی کرد کرا و روزه نما و نسبت اما هنگاوه کی زور گوره بو و زورش گرنگ بو به گمان گورانه کی گوره بسر وضعی ترکیه داوتو و اما همیشه گوتو مانه که شی کرد لترکیه یا لهر شوینه کتر ابی باشتی چاره سر بکره نه کرد بشر تواو دبی نه کرد بشر اجدتوانی هدفی خوی جبه کن لو زیاتر که خوینه کی زیاتر درجه لما زیاتر نبی و اما متاسفین و دلگرانین بو رشتنی خوینی هر قدر خوینه کی چه کرد بی چه عربی بی چه فارسی چه ترکی اما وکو ملت و وکو نتوا اما برای کینو جیرانی کینو ابی پیک و بشی لبرا و اما هر چی لدسمان به ایکین بو یارمتی دولتی ترکیه بو یارمتی پگکش بو اوی چاره سری کی آشتیانه بدو زینوا طبی پگکش اما فشاری بودینین داوای لدکین نابی پنا بو شر و چک و مانه بباد اگر پنای بو چاره سری آشتی اینا طبی اما هرچیل پیمان بکره یارمتی دین اگر خیاری شری هل بجارت رگی اما اوان لیک جاده بید.
Last year, Turkish Prime Minister Mr. Erdogan visited us in Erbil. In a public statement, he clearly stated that the days for the denial of the Kurdish people is over. So the denial of Kurdish people is over. Therefore, we welcome that, and that was a very important and great step. There is no doubt that great changes have taken place in Turkey. But for the Kurdish question, whether in Turkey or in other places, it cannot be solved through violence. So neither the Kurds would be able to achieve their objectives through violence, nor the Kurds would be annihilated through violence. Therefore, the only way to solve the problem is through peaceful means, because the continuity of this situation would only lead to more bloodshed. And we are sorry for any drop of blood that would be shed, whether it's the blood of a Kurd, of a Turk, of an Arab, of a Persian, because we as nations and people, as we are brothers and we are neighbors, we want to live together and peacefully. Therefore, if anything is needed to help Turkey and also PKK to solve this problem peacefully, we are ready to do that. We will continue our efforts and we will exert pressure and also call upon the PKK not to resort to violence or to weapons in order to solve the problems. If they chose a peaceful approach, then we will help in order to help solve the problem. But if they choose war or fighting, then we would be going to different directions.
Thank you. Yes, way in the back there.
Mr. President, I was wondering if you were concerned about the growing strength of the security forces under the control of the Iraqi Prime Minister, and whether there's anything you feel that you can do to balance that growing strength.
آن مافیه ما یعنی گران بین چون که پیوسته جیش عراقی به شوک درست بکریتوا که جیشی ولاد بی نک جیشی شخصی و ما مثلا شخصی نیه نابی سپای عراق سر به یک نفر بی و به کیفی خوی اوامری پیدا بی به پی دستور بی به پی قوانین بی و ناج بی به شوک جیشی عراقی دست خاطر ناو کاروباری ناو خوی ولاد بلام استا من دجی او فرهنگی که جیش عراقی پیدروز دکریتوا که ولای بو یک شخص بی استوایا بله امام اولی کدین که وکو گفتم لا اتفاقی هولیریش گرانوی هاوسنگی بو هیزی چکداری عراق اما یکی که لخاله هر اساسکیان به نسبتی هم
Of course, it's our right to be concerned about the situation. The new Iraqi army needs to be built on the basis of being the army of the country, not an army of an individual. So to be an army that belongs to the peoples of Iraq and to the state of Iraq, in accordance with the constitution and with laws. And also the Iraqi army should not interfere in the internal political differences of the country. This is the culture, this is the mentality and way of thinking that I'm against, because we want the Iraqi army to be loyal to Iraqi people as a whole and not to be loyal to one individual or one man. Therefore, as I said earlier, we will try in order to make sure that the Erbil agreements will be implemented, and one of the most important points is that, as I mentioned earlier, is the return of balance to the state establishment and namely to the armed forces.
Thank you. There's a question up front from Mike Knights, right over here.
Thanks very much. Mr. President, thank you for coming and thank you for all the hospitality you've shown, particularly to the Washington Institute when we visited your beautiful region. I wanted to ask a related question, which is when US forces were removed from northern Iraq, the combined security mechanism, there was a concern that there would be an increased chance of accidental clashes along the Kurdish federal line, particularly in Kirkuk, in Nineveh, northern Diyala. Do you think that there's an increased risk now of clashes breaking out along that line? Is there anything being done to reduce the risk of an accidental clash?
اما همو حول قدين بوي شر نبي چونك خراب ترين شد شر حقيقة و اما هولا دين دستور جبجه بكري بلام بالتأكيد اگر ماده 140 جبجه نكري زويان درنگ وضعك قابل تقينوه.
So we will do whatever we can to prevent a war from happening, because this is the worst case scenario is to have confrontation in these areas. Therefore, our main priority will be to make sure that the Constitution is implemented and Article 140 of the Constitution is implemented. But if it's not implemented, then sooner or later we will have to face that reality.
Thanks. I think there was a question up front, right over here. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. President. Emily Cadet with Congressional Quarterly. You mentioned earlier that you were heartened to hear the U.S. commitment to Iraq, and I was curious if you could assess for us how much influence you think the U.S. maintains over various factions in the country, particularly the Prime Minister, and if you've seen any diminishment since the withdrawal of combat troops.
نفوذ امریکا بند نیه به هبونی هیزی امریکا یا خود چند هیزی امریکا لعراق یا لهر شوینه راستی هیزی امریکا لدرجه التزامی امریکا ده به هر مسئله اگر امریکا روکو سروک اوباما دوباره تأکیدی کرده و جگیرکی دوباره تأکیدیان کرده و آن التزامی خوان دوباره کرده و باز عراق باز حریم کردستان به خلق کردستان لبره و اگر بیا نوی اره والا تأثیریان هیا لهموش وینک.
So the influence of the United States is not tied to the presence of U.S. troops in Iraq or elsewhere. The strength and the influence of the United States is in the degree of its commitment to the commitments that the United States shows. And what I have heard the President of the United States, the Vice President, reiterating their commitment to Iraq, to Kurdistan region, to the people of Kurdistan, this is what importance. Therefore, be it that way, certainly the United States has influence.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in here with a question of my own, if I may, because it's the rare Washington Institute seminar where somebody doesn't ask something about Iran. And I wanted to ask you, Mr. President, you've been very patient with us, answering all kinds of questions about very difficult and sensitive subjects. Can you say something about Iranian influence in the Kurdistan region of Iraq and about your government's attitude toward Iranian issues, and in particular toward the enforcement of economic sanctions against Iran? Thank you.
إيران دولتێکی مهمة لناوچە و ئێمە پێمان خۆشە پەیوەندی ئێمە لەگەڵ ئێران طبیعی بی و هیچ گیر و گرفتێک نەبی، بەڵام معناوە نییە ئێمە لە هەموو شتێک متفقین لەگەڵ ئێران. لە هەندێشت طبعا بەرژەوەندەیەکی زۆریشمان هەیە پێکەوە، چونکە جیرانی ئێمەن، دەراوسێ ئێمەن. لە هەندێک شت ئێمە خلافمان هەیە، لە هەندێک شتیش متفقین. من بصراحة بڵێم ئێمە دوای ئەوەی کە ئەم هەموو قوربانیانەمان داوە وەکو خەڵکی کوردستان، ئێمە ئەبی خۆمان بڕیاری خۆمان بدەین و ئازاد بین، نە ئیران و نە هیچ وڵاتێکی تر لە جیاتی میلەتی ئێمە بڕیار بۆ ئێمە ناتەوێت. ئەمە من بە واضحی ئەیڵێم. بەنسبەت عقوبات ئێمە ملتەزمین بە بڕیارەکانی مەجلسی ئەمن و ممکنیە ئێمە خەرقی یەک بڕیاری مەجلسی ئەمن بکەین.
Iran is an important country in the area. We would like to have normal relations and not to have any problems with Iran. But that doesn't mean that we agree on everything. Of course, we have shared interests because we share borders and we are neighbors. But of course, there are issues that we disagree and there are issues that we agree. I have stated my position very clearly in the past, and I would like to state it again, that after all the sacrifices that our people have given, so we want our people to make their own decision, neither Iran nor any other country to make a decision on behalf of our people. So this is a clear-cut position of the Kurdish people and of the leadership. As far as the second part of the question, we are committed to the UN Security Council resolutions, and in no way we will violate or breach any resolution.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yes, sir. Way up front.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Gary Gentile from Platts. I've read that you're thinking of building a pipeline to ship your oil through Turkey, and wondering how serious these plans are, if you intend to build this pipeline, if so, when you might make that decision, and if that decision depends on whether the dispute that you have with the Baghdad government over payment is resolved, or whether you will make that decision independently. Thank you.
کمیاتێکی زۆری نەوت دۆزراتەوە لە کوردستان و ئێمە پابندین بە دستور کە نەوت و غاز ملکی هەموو ملەتی عێراقە و وارداتیشی بۆ هەموو خەڵکی عێراق و ئەمە بۆ باشکردنی وەزعی ئابووری هەموو عێراق حقیقەت نەکرد تەنها بۆ کوردستان چونکە ئەو بۆڕیە ئێستا هەیە بە تەنها بەشیەوە ناکە ئەو هەموو نەفتە ببات و ئێستا لە گفتوگودا لە نێوان وەزیری نەوت و سامانە سروشتیەکان لە هەرێمی کوردستان لەگەڵ هاوتاکەی لە تورکیا و لەگەڵ بەغداش وەمە هیچ علاقەی بەو ئەزمەی ئێستا نییە کە هی وەستاندنی نەوتوانە.
A good amount of oil was found in Kurdistan, and I would like also to reiterate our commitment to the constitution regarding this issue, that oil and gas belong to all the peoples of Iraq, and also the revenues should be shared among the Iraqi people. Of course, when we talk about the oil, it's to improve the economic situation of all of Iraq. We are not talking only about Kurdistan, but the pipeline that exists now is not enough, is not sufficient for the amount of oil that will be produced. Therefore, now there are talks between the Ministry of Natural Resources in the region and its counterpart in Turkey, as well as Baghdad, in order to work on this issue. But it has nothing to do with the current dispute that's there on the payment.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Steve Feinberg, Department of State. Thank you so much, Mr. President, for your visit today. You've talked a little bit about your assessment of the Prime Minister's performance. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about assessing the performance thus far of the Speaker of Parliament, Osama al-Nujaifi. And on a related second question, how do you assess right now the KRG's relations with neighboring Nineveh province? Thank you.
والله هموما كمكرمان هيا أخو أوليات بضيار مالكي يعني بلام نجيفي هيج دا صلاتي كي تنفيذي نية همو دا صلاة همو لاي مالكي دا صلاة لاي كي بنجي لاي لو دكري وموضوع شخصي نية بالنسبة نينوا استبايواندي من باشا أو ليستي كردستاني جرانا وبيكوتن لقال ليستي حدبا لا است مجلسي محافظة موصل هم كرد وهم عرب بيكوان لوي تركماني تدا مسيحي تدا و پێم وە هیچ مشکلایەک نەماوە ئێستا بینی هەرێم و بینی نینەوە.
None of us is flawless. All of us have got our flaws and shortcomings. But when we have mentioned Maliki, the point is that he has got the authorities, they got the power. Nujaifi doesn't have executive power. That's why we've mentioned it's whoever gets the power, he would be getting the complaint and to blame. Therefore, it's not a personal issue. It's about the power that they exercise. As far as, in fact, in addition to what the Constitution has entitled him to, he has got 10 more times power and grabbed all that power. But vis-a-vis the second section of the question about the relations with Nineveh, we have now good relations, and the fraternity list has gone back to the Provincial Council, and as a result of the agreement that they had with Hadba list, now the Provincial Council is functioning, and the Kurds and Arabs and Turkmen and Christians, and they're all working together. Therefore, there are no problems between Kurdistan region and Nineveh. And also regarding the oil issues, the KRG wants the Nineveh Provincial Council and also the governor to be involved in anything related to the oil.
Thank you. With the President's permission, we have time for just 2 more questions. Okay? And so I apologize in advance to those of you that I may not get to. I'm going to take that gentleman in the back, if we could get a microphone over there. And then you, sir, yes, will be the last question. Thank you. Yes, please.
Mr. President, thank you for this. Tolga Tanis from Hürriyet, a Turkish daily. I had 2 follow-ups actually. First of all, could you define the current situation, current cooperation level with Turkey in terms of the PKK? I mean, it's obvious that you're gonna not fight PKK members alongside Turkish army, but how about in terms of the handing over PKK members arrested in KRG region and intelligence sharing? And the second question about the referendum that you mentioned in terms of the statu quo. What will you put in front of the Kurdish people in this kind of referendum in the near future? And you didn't mention about the timeline also. If you can clarify the timeline too, I appreciate it. Thank you.
طبعا هلوستي اما واضحة بتجربة كي دور ودريجيش بشر مسألة بكاكي حل نوبي لبروا أجر ش دولتي تركيا وش بكاكي خياري آشتيال بجيرن هيج سقفك نية بو هوكاري اما أجر رجاي تر هالبجيرن اما تيدانين زور واضحي بالنسبة اوي جرانوا بو ملتي خومان حقي خومانا چونك هيج رجاي تر نوميني لبردمي اما و آخر خياري اما دبي طبعا وقتها برلماني اما قراره ده چجوره پرسیارێک لخلقی اما بکد و قسەی لێ دەکەین چجوره پرسیارێک بکەین سقفی زمانیش من بصراحت بود چاکردنی وضع عراق مفتوح نیه سقفی زمانی لای اما معلومه بلا من نامه بیسته باسی بکم اگه هیچ مفتوح نیه وکو جاران من چاوروانی ناکی
Regarding the first part of the question, our position is very clear, and also our long history and experience has shown us that through war and violence, this problem cannot be solved. The PKK problem cannot be solved. Whether the Turkish government or PKK, if they choose a peaceful approach, then there would be no limit for our cooperation and assistance that we can provide in order to help solve this problem peacefully. But if any side chooses a different road, violence, then we will not be part of that process. As for the second part of the question, when we said we will go back to our people, this is our right. We will not see, and we do not see any other option apart from that. And this is the last resort option. But then it will be the parliament of Kurdistan would decide what kind of question would be put forward. Because our patience and also the timeline for improving the situation, for remedying and solving the problems in Baghdad is not an open-ended. We have the timeline, but I don't want to disclose it here. Because we cannot continue going on waiting for the problems to be solved like before.
Okay. Last question. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Vice President al-Hashimi sought refuge in Kurdistan. Kurdistan offered him a place to stay and a safe passage, initially to Qatar and then to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This makes Kurdistan complicit in triggering the harsh government response, the Iraqi government response that is due to that act. Was the move itself approved, condoned, blessed by the Saudis? And a related question, sir, the Turkish incursions, repeated incursions into northern Iraq, how does that impact your position on the fragile balance within the existing Iraqi government?
Hashemi, the Saudi Arabia approved. The Saudi Arabia approved sanctuary led in Hashemi. Second part الغزوات التركية ما كان.
اولا مسئله هاشمی مشکلی ایمنیه. هاشمی استش نایب رئیس جمهوره ایدانه نکراوه و بعد من بصراحت بلیم مسئله هاشمی تأسیس کراوه. وقتی خوشی که او مشکلات پیش من پیشنهادم کردم گفتم هر سه سروکاتی لگل سروکی لیست عراقیه دانیشن بریار یک بدن جانب سیاسیه که باوی همو لاگل احراج در بچی نکراوه تا استه. الان مسئله که قضاییه کامه قضا اوی جورترین متهم جورترین مدان با یک اشارت لمکتب قائد عام قوات مسلحه ابی تکابره کی بگناه و بری کابره کی بری شبیه به مدان و متهم اما چه قضا که من نتوانیم بروابم قضا بکین اما یک دوام گفتم مشکلی منیه نایب رئیس جمهور هاتو بودیتنی رئیس جمهور اگر متهم بوله بغداد هشتی بیت با مشکلی با اما تهدیم کرد یعنی او قضای عراقی لای او زور مهمه اگر زور مهمه خوی داله 2 سال پیشی است ملفی هاشمی لای منه باشه بود 2 سال او ملفی هشتوا یعنی او دیوی دفاع لقضا بکاتن قضای عراقی منیش بچم کابره یک دخیل هاتو لای من تسلیمی بکم اگر هر سی سلوکاتی قرار یان داد تسلیم بکری تسلیم دکری در بکری در دکری تصویر بکری تصویر بکری بلان بقصه مکتبی قائد عامو او قضای لجر تأثیری او مع علاقه پیدا نه دیگرم نه دری دکم نه منعی دکم خوی آزاده چوت دروا بخوی چوا بیت اوج بخوی دیتوا بلام من راضی نیم ایمت کلاوی او موضوع بکن چون که مشکل ایمانی بلام تسلیمی نکن اما یک دو هم مسئله یا طبعا من پیمان نخوشه جارو بار او قصف و امانه دکتی بلام حقیقت قصفه که اکثری لس من نوچه سنوریه کنه بویش من علیم ابی بس آشتی چاره سر بکری چون که نه به فروکه چاره سر دکری و نه به آرپیجی چاره سر دکری و ابی علاج یک دوزی نوا
In fact, as far as the Hashemi case is concerned, it's not our problem as a Kurdish problem in Kurdistan region. He is still the vice president of Iraq. He has not been convicted. And in fact, honestly, this issue has been politicized. At the beginning of the crisis, I proposed that the 3 presidencies in Iraq, in addition to the chairman or the president of the Iraqi list, sit down together and make a decision on this political aspect of the problem, and so that everybody would be out of that embarrassment. And whatever decision the 3 leaderships would make, in addition to the Iraqi, we will accept it. They said, no, this is a judicial issue. What kind of judicial system we are talking about? A system that has turned the biggest culprit and convicted into innocent people with just a mere signal from the office of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces in Iraq, and somebody very innocent to be turned to a huge criminal and a culprit. So we have lost confidence in the court system because of all the interferences that has taken place. He is the and the judicial system and the court system that would be working at instructions and recommendations of the Office of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces to turn people into guilty and convict people and to make people innocent in accordance with their loyalty and allegiance to the Commander-in-Chief, that would not get our support and trust. Hashemi is still the Vice President. He was in Baghdad. Since he was a criminal and he was wanted, then why did they leave Baghdad? And why did they export that problem to Kurdistan region? And since he talks about the Iraqi court system and the judicial, but he said, Maliki himself says that he has had the file for the last 2 years. Then why did he wait for 2 years and then to come up with this thing? And then later on, why does he send me a message so that we will help him sneak out of the country? Okay? So why, if he's a criminal, then why should he be given that opportunity to leave or sneak out? They wanted to show that everybody wants to respect rule of law, to respect the judicial system, and it's only us who are not respecting it. No, in fact, as I said, still that meeting of the 3 presidencies had not taken place. The meeting of the 3 presidencies and the chairman of the Iraqi list should take place in order to make any decision. Whatever decision they will make, we will respect that. Whether they will decide to arrest him, to have him leave the country, but we will not abide whatever thing comes out at the office of the Commander-in-Chief. And now he is outside the country. If he comes back, he will make the decision if he stays out. But this is something that's not related to us in the region as much as it's related to the overall situation. As for the border incursions, in fact, we're sad about these things happening, but that also tells us, although it's happening at the border areas, remote border areas, but also it tells us that this problem cannot be solved through military means. This problem can only be solved through peaceful means. Therefore, neither planes nor RPGs would help solving this problem.
Mr. President, Zor Spas, Min Dulum Khosha. Thank you very much. Thank all of you for your attendance. We look forward to hosting you here again. Thank you.